Hey guys, we're live. It is Thursday, the 29th. It is finally the last day of February. Took long enough. Um, Being a leap year, and as I mentioned yesterday, and I mentioned yesterday in my blog post that leap year happens every 4 years. It's because it takes the Earth 365.25 of um, days to travel around the sun. That 0.25 seems to be a bit of a problem. It adds up and um, gives us a leap year. We take that extra time. We invested in the Gregorian channel. Um, Sorry. Give me 1 second, guys. I got to respond to text. One second. There we go. And so I'm back. I got to refocus here. That's the problem with multitasking. Something suffers. We might not think so, but of course it does, because attention itself um, can't really be split. However, awareness can go everywhere at once. Awareness is everywhere at once. There's no issue with that. And the trick, I believe, if there is a trick, is to shift to an awareness focus versus an attention focus. Attention is one pointed. We use attention to help us reach that point of all-encompassing awareness. We could liken it to, excuse me, a master hunter has to be, if you watch a lion, if you watch a wolf, if you watch, or even a predator, or I'm sorry, a prey, they have to be aware of everything. They're aware of a blade of grass that somehow seems to fold differently than the blow of the wind. They're aware of every sound, aware of the difference between a leaf that cracks because of the wind or something being stepped on. They are aware of the scent. They're aware of everything they're capable of being aware of. And yet, they're not exactly one pointed in their focus, because then that would allow their guard to be down for something else. So if we're doing more than one thing, which I am right now, it's best to keep it shifted in that sense of awareness, being aware without trying to be super focused on any one thing. Seems like practical advice, which I'm not prone to giving. Although, in my opinion, there's little difference between practical advice and spiritual advice. If I tell someone that they will, it would probably prove to be beneficial if they meditate, that might seem sort of a spiritual advice, might not seem to have a practical value to the matter at hand. However, when we are more relaxed, when we enhance our creativity, when we enter that state of flow, where synchronicities happen and inspirations more easily available, our problems are easier handled than if we're tense, than if we're cut off from the source of flow and inspiration as well, if we ignore the synchronicities. So you can see, advice of telling someone to meditate might sound like spiritual advice, and it is, it's also extremely practical. Um, Somehow, I think because of a lot of the New Age uh, beliefs have gone a little bit mainstream, it seems that when we give uh, spiritual wisdom, spiritual advice, that it loses a little something because it's often confused with something that isn't practical and day in, day out concerns. Of course, everything is a day in, day out concern. So, back to February. It is February, the last day. Um, and it's interesting considering that we have that leap year and that meteorologist, tough word for me, um, generally say that spring begins on the 1st of March. Astronomically, it begins in the equinox. We talked about that a bit yesterday. Um, so we've been granted an extra day of winter. And it certainly feels like it today. Oddly enough, um, yesterday being 64 degrees, maybe a little higher. And today is in the high in the low 30s, mid 30s. Cold enough that I slipped on some ice this morning. I saw it and I recognized it as ice, and I thought, well, it's not that cold. It'll probably crack underneath my weight, and if I'm careful, I'll be okay. And as soon as I put my foot down, I slid, and for the first time in a really long time, since my trail running days, my ultra running days, took a fairly bad fall. Normally, because I participated in judo for some time, if I fall, I'm able to land properly, slap the mat, where you tuck and roll. This happened so quick and so unexpectedly because I only tentatively put my foot out there. I took a fall and I posted my arm. The last thing you ever want to do when you fall is post your arm. And the one thing that I did when I fell was post my arm. So now my wrist is jacked up and my back pain, which was getting better, has flared up a bit. Not to mention I threw my knee out of whack a couple of days ago, avoiding stepping on my cat. I mentioned that in my state of the body video earlier today during my workout. Nothing that I won't be able to work through. I've been working through my back issue for several months now. The knee is probably arthritic. Haven't had it tested, but there's a fair amount of issues present on a day-to-day basis that I can manage if I do enough band work, but something like that little incident with the cat is enough to increase the pain quite a bit, and has been for about a week now. So we'll see if I can work through that, just double up on my band work. It's the wrist that's going to be the issue, because the wrists are all important to any burpee practitioner, as well as yoga. Some of my favorite poses, especially the going through the sun salutation. And because I've been doing the Tibetan rites, the 5 Tibetan rites, officially known as the 5 Tibetan rites of rejuvenation, they are fairly wrist intensive because you're doing something a little different than traditional yoga. You're doing repetition of certain yogic postures. You're doing some back bends. You're doing tabletop pose, and again, you're doing that for reps. That puts a lot of emphasis on the wrist, as well as downward dog, upward dog for repetitions. That puts a lot of strain on the wrist. Hopefully, it'll also help reduce the inflammation and keep the wrist flexible. And a day or two, being in a little bit of pain, and I'll be okay. So that seems to be the state of the body. Pain. 58 in about 2 months. Actually, just over a month. I'll be 59, and it's a high mileage body that I have. Lots of years of doing stuff. The best thing I've ever done, and oddly one of the things that left me prone to this latest injury with my back, is yoga, which shows you no matter what you do, you need to be careful. For me, I was doing three sessions a day, fairly, 2 of them being fairly intensive, 1 in the evening just being to unwind. I was spending more time in some more, not extreme, but advanced postures, trying to increase the length of time. I was really working on opening up energetic centers of the body, and it left me in a position where it didn't injure me, but it left me prone for injury. And then I did something stupid, which I've talked about before, but no sense bringing it up again. Just, it's enough to know it was my fault. It was avoidable, but I did it anyway, and I ended up getting injured. And I've been working through it ever since. And again, this was maybe 3 months ago. It's been slow healing. It was on the verge of getting better, and then I would reintroduce a yoga pose before it's time. And right now there's so many that I'm just not ready for. But you start feeling better, and you start missing those postures that have been part of your life for such a long time. You put it in against maybe your better judgment, and you're back a step or two. Maybe not all the way back, but just enough to make you think you're going to do something different the next time, and yet. So yeah, it was yoga that put me in the position of injury being a possibility. It's also yoga that keeps me fit and healthy as far as mobility. But more importantly, and here we're talking about yoga asanas. We always try to make that distinction, because yoga itself is a complete lifestyle, a complete practice. It incorporates every facet of my life. And even if you're not a serious practitioner, it should incorporate every facet of your life as well, to an extent. By that I mean, you have the foundation of yoga, you have the yamas and the niyamas. Yamas being the ethical restraints that we place upon ourselves, and the niyamas being the personal observances that we place upon ourselves. These are suggestions. That's why it's easy to say that they should incorporate every facet of your life, because they don't take over your life. They're just suggestions on how to have a happier, more meaningful, peaceful life. And when you put it that way, who doesn't want that? Who doesn't want a happier life? Who doesn't want a life that is free or free-ish from the psychological addiction to suffering? It's got to be made a distinction that sorrow and grief and pain and sadness, it all occurs in our life. Psychological suffering is when we make demands upon those natural things that happen. So if we are grieving and we're so immersed in the grieving process, and yet we don't want to be any longer. We want to get out of it. We want to be happier, get on with our life, so we try to push it away, and we simply can't. or we refuse to recognize that we're still deeply grieving and we don't deal with it and we try to push it away, push it down, ignore it. All of that leads to suffering, which is different than the actual pain and the grief that's occurring in the moment. Our friend Destiny Forever Walks, PhD, is here. Hello and happy Thursday. How are you? I'm doing pretty well, although I did list my present, not injuries, but painful body parts that seem to be multiplying over the past few days. But other than that, I'm doing pretty well. How are you doing today, Destiny? I was talking about the difference between psychological suffering and the pain and hardships that we experience in life. A lot of people hear that promise that yoga or the Buddhist path reduces our suffering, reduces our addiction to suffering, which seems a strange thing to say. And I should explain that, and I will in a minute. And they start to practice yoga, they start to meditate, to do the breath work, and they find that they are still in pain, or they're still experiencing sorrow, or they're still missing their ex-partner. All what in Taoism they call the 10,000 things in life are still present. Because yoga isn't a path, or Buddhism isn't a path of avoidance. We're not avoiding suffering. What we're doing is accepting that sometimes painful things happen to us in life, that sometimes we are sad, sometimes we're grieving, sometimes life simply is hard and it feels like it grinds us down. When we add suffering into the mix, again, suffering is when we try to push that away, when we refuse to acknowledge that this is what's taking place right now, that right now in this moment, life is hard. Because nothing really changes until we become aware of it, until we accept it, and then we can make educated decisions on how to move forward, or maybe even move backwards, whatever the case may be. Unless we are aware of the present situation fully, 100%, nothing's going to change. The situation might be different, but that addiction to suffering is still present. What I mean by addiction to suffering, because some people might argue that and say, well, I'm certainly not addicted. If you have experienced any moment, from being stuck in traffic to experience the loss of a loved one in any form or any way, and you're attempting to force the situation to be different than it is. If you're going out to bars thinking I'm going to drink the problem away, I'm going to party the problem away, I'm going to meet someone right now and take care of it, that is just causing more suffering. And being unaware of all that means that we are addicted to the issue itself until we become aware. And then things can change. Oh, Destiny says, I'm doing absolutely great. Did you mention yesterday about soaking your feet? I did. Thank you for bringing that up. It's a nice, for me, change of subject. We're going to Google. Soaking feet before bed. I can't remember which yoga teacher did a short about it. I'm always looking for ways to arrange and rearrange my sleep hygiene. I talk about that quite a bit because a year or so ago, 2 years ago, for a long time, for I guess, almost a 2-year period of time, I suffered from not just insomnia, but anxiety, panic attacks, and it would doubly feed into it because I would tell myself, how can I possibly, at first, I didn't even know what it was. I would lie down and go to sleep, tired, full day, doing all the stuff that I do. And I'd start falling asleep, and all of a sudden, it was almost like a live wire. Now I can fully see that it was panic, that it was anxiety, but then I had nothing to compare it to, nothing to contrast it to, nothing to give it a name. And I couldn't lie down. I would jump out of bed, and I would repeat that process for hours, feeling like I was finally going to drift off, and then it would just hit me. I was misdiagnosed, as it turns out, with progressive lung disorder, progressive breathing disorder, and it turned out not to be the case at all. But of course, if you're an athlete, and at the time I was still training for ultra running, and a meditation teacher, and you teach breath work, and all of a sudden you're diagnosed with this progressive lung disorder, you can see how that actually feeds into anxiety as well. Fortunately, it wasn't the case, but the anxiety itself was still present, and I had to make some changes. First, I had to admit, talking about suffering, talking about awareness, I had to admit that I was suffering from anxiety, and I was having panic attacks, that I was still grieving the loss of my father. I was still grieving about the loss of my business, still grieving 10 years down the line, the loss of my marriage, the loss of my mother, the loss of my dogs, 2 of them in a short period of time. Life was hard, and there was no sense glossing over that. So first thing I did to improve my sleep was admitting that I was suffering, and then I had to make some changes. I started getting up earlier, and I always would get up earlier. I would get up about 5 o'clock to meditate. I get up at 3 o'clock now. That helps in a number of ways. I get my meditation in, I get my first round of yoga in, 1 cup of coffee. I enjoy coffee, but too much, the way I was drinking it before throughout the day, leads to bad sleep habits. As well, if you suffer from anxiety, if you suffer from panic attacks, too much caffeine just isn't good for you. However, there are some health benefits to caffeine, and I like it. I drink organic coffee, that 1 cup a day, that early in the morning, perfect. It's become part of my writing ritual. I have my coffee at my desk. I write every morning. By the time I'm done my meditation, my breath work, my first round of yoga, it's 4 o'clock. I write for a while, I drink my coffee, and I go out for a walk. Getting outside early in the morning is part of my sleep hygiene, as is meditation and the breath work, getting up early, limiting my caffeine. So you can see how all these things that I actually love to do, just doing them a little bit earlier becomes part of the sleep hygiene practice. I practice a awakening breath, the breath of fire, but I only do it once in the morning because it's a vigorous breath. It's designed to wake up the body, to wake up the mind. You don't want to do it too late in the day. Knowing what breath works for a particular time of day, for a particular instant during the day, for a particular reason is important. You don't want to just do breath work haphazardly. For one, you get haphazard results. For two, it can interfere with digestion, it can interfere with your energy level, with your nervous state, with anxiety, with panic attacks, and with sleep. So breathwork is a powerful practice, but know why you're doing something. Know the reason why you're doing something. So getting outside, circling back. Um, I always talk about getting that first sunlight, even if it's just ambient light, but it has to be outside. It has to be natural light hitting the eyes and the positive hormonal response that our body has. The response is to wake us up. We produce cortisol, adrenaline, norepinephrine, stress-related hormones. But it's what we need that early in the day to get us going, to help us prepare to chase down the woolly mammoth or avoid the saber-toothed tiger or put in a productive day at work, whatever it is. At the same time, those hormones die off in the course of the day, and their raw material is used to make melatonin and serotonin, which are the relaxation, sleep hormones that we need, that our body decreases the amount that it makes due to age, due to stress, due to improper diet, all kinds of stuff, overtraining. So if we can enhance our natural function of the stress hormones, which also help us deal with stress through the course of the day, if we enhance their production, that means we have more raw material for the body to produce melatonin and serotonin. I have a breath practice along with my yoga practice in the afternoon that is designed to keep me sort of even keeled. In the evening, I have a practice that brings me down, that enters me more deeply and fully into the parasympathetic nervous state, which is the rest and digest. I don't eat too close to bed. I have a minimum 2 hours, 3, sometimes 4, even better. I have a cup of relaxing tea, usually turmeric and ginger, which helps inflammation as well as digestion. Sometimes the Yogi sleep blend, nothing with caffeine. I like green tea, but I have a hard time fitting it in my day, because even that trace amount of caffeine later in the day can be harmful for sleep. If you have any trouble sleeping, you got to guard those habits. You got to find what's working for you. Circling all the way back to the morning, not just getting that first light, being out in nature. The mind is relaxed, the brain is relaxed. We respond to the fractals of nature with the own fractals within our brain itself, our bodies itself being a fractal, responding to outer fractals. We're in sync. Everything's synchronized. We recognize ourselves as part of nature within the secular nature that takes place through the course of the day, meaning we rise when the sun comes up, we start preparing for sleep as the sun goes down. All right, all the way back. The last thing that I've added into my sleep hygiene practice has been, because it was sent by a yoga teacher that I admire, soaking the feet in warm, I try to do a little past warm, almost hot water, like I'm taking a hot bath, 20 minutes. It helps blood circulation, reduces stress and anxiety, and it also improves sleep quality. The first time I did it, I slept all the way through the night for the first time in quite some time. Usually I'm up 2 or 3 times, not for long. And it doesn't seem to affect my energy level. But anytime you lose some sleep, you're losing some sleep. So the fact that I slept all through the night was pretty big. Last night I did it again. I did wake up once in the middle of the night. I went right back to sleep. So you can use Epsom salt. You can use essential oil. Some recommend vinegar as well, which helps detox the body a bit. Something to consider. So let's do some research together while we're here. Epsom salt. It's also great for exfoliating your feet if that is an issue for you. It isn't for me. It also is a great remedy to keep feet from stinking too much, because it pulls moisture out of the skin and it prevents the growth of bacteria. So it's a very hygienic practice as well. Soaking your feet in hot water actually lowers the core temperature of the body. Heat is drawn away from the core, away from the heart, and down towards your feet. Having a lower core body temperature helps you fall asleep faster and deeper. Odom says it's also a good fertilizer for plants. Would that be Epsom salt or vinegar? I'm going to guess and say Epsom salt. So if you lower your core temperature, which is why some people recommend sleeping in socks, at least in colder weather, because again, it draws the temperature away from your core and into your feet, which helps you sleep. It's always better to go to bed a little on the cold side. And then as you sleep, you can draw a blanket around you. But you don't want to be too warm as you try to get to sleep. That will interfere. Odom says Epsom salt. That's interesting. I guess I can see that. Destiny says these products help in soaking your feet, like Epsom salt and vinegar. Yes, I didn't know peroxide. That's interesting. I didn't know baking soda, but I'm not surprised at all. Baking soda is just so good for so many things, including brushing your teeth. If you're someone who is at all concerned about fluoride, one thing to consider, fluoride is a natural element that we need a trace amount. We don't need a great deal. So if you're tracing your fluoride and you see, you're getting it from all these different sources, maybe you want to do something to curb the amount of fluoride. I'll be honest with you, I don't give it much thought. I don't do a mouthwash with fluoride, but I do use toothpaste with fluoride. So a lower core, this is from a medical site, a lower core temperature coupled with a higher distal, hands and feet, temperature before sleep are associated with shorter sleep latency and better sleep quality. A warm foot bath is thought to facilitate heat dissipation, difficult word, to improve sleep outcome. This is actually from a medical experiment, a medical study that took place. Epsom salt relieves stress and helps your feet relax, eases pain and muscle cramps, boosts nerves and muscle function, helps prevent blood clots. So you put that with the benefits of soaking your feet in warm water, you can see the positive benefits. It also has more specific uses, reduces and prevents athlete's foot, loosens skin to remove splinters, treats toenail fungus, soothes pain and sprains and bruises, eases gout pain and discomfort. If you are experiencing gout, definitely soak your feet in Epsom salt, but as well, really address your diet. You can literally be pain-free from gout if you watch your diet, if you watch what you take in and reduce the foods that are inflammatory. Vinegar has natural antibacterial properties, so bacteria have a hard time growing on your skin. If you have fungi on your feet, including athlete's foot, vinegar may be less effective, but it does fight bacteria that causes odor. So that has been um, a recent addition. So far, um, I'm happy with the results. I definitely urge. We live in a sleep deprived society. Another thing to consider: limit your one, limit news. And man, there's enough bad news going around. You don't want to take it to bed with you. It'll still be there in the morning, and it'll be there to greet you as soon as you turn on your computer, which is the next thing. Um, avoid computer lights, avoid phone lights, avoid, try to keep your room as dark as possible. But that digital light, computer light, um, even half an hour before you try to go to sleep, it affects the eyes. You might think, well, I'm going to close my eyes, it'll be fine. But it has an effect on the eyes that keep them, we might look that up so I can get a little more scientific. It'll keep you awake. It will prohibit the sleep quality quite a bit, as well as if you have any kind of light glowing from a clock, from, I have a air purifier in my room. I enjoy the white noise, but it has this little glowing light that I just taped over, so that even that. Consider wearing a sleep mask. Consider earplugs. Again, these are all things to improve the quality and the length of time that we sleep. And as I mentioned, we're definitely in a sleep-deprived society, a sleep-deprived age. Just a few suggestions. Let's see, I'm looking at a New York Times health article. You can get a foot soak bucket on Amazon for $40. I just use a plastic tray that I had laying around the house. Man, there is a specific instrument, a specific thing for everything you want to do. And it always, if you went and got this same bucket in Lowe's or Target or Walmart, it would probably be like $6. But because it's called a foot soak bucket on Amazon, people will spend $40 for it. You could get fancy and you can get one of the jacuzzi foot soaks. You don't need to. $5 bag of Epsom salt, a $6 bucket, and hot water. You're good to go. If you have diabetes, be careful soaking your feet in hot water because, as it says here in New York Times, poor circulation can make it difficult to sense heat properly, meaning that you can actually burn yourself. So just be careful. You can do it while you at your computer. You can do it while you're watching TV. You can do it while you're reading. Another thing to consider, and this is actually part of my sadhana, my spiritual practice, spiritual reading. When you go to bed, what you're putting in your mind, you're going to take with you in your sleep. I love reading. I love reading all kinds of books. I love reading science, history, some fiction. But before bed, I don't want anything that races my mind. I don't want anything that stimulates my thoughts or keeps me interested too much, deeply absorbed in the book. I want something that I can put aside easily. And spiritual reading specifically before bed. And a lot of times it's the same books, the same texts, the same spiritual sacred texts that I've been reading for decades, some almost my entire life. Um, so not only the language is normally fairly dry, the message is extremely valuable, extremely important. Um, so the dryness of the language can sometimes help you fall asleep. You have little trouble putting the book down, but most importantly, you are taking the spiritual essence of what you're reading. It could be the Bible, it could be the Bhagavad Gita, the Upanishads, the Talmud, it could be the Quran, whatever it is that's important to you. And you're taking that with you as you fall off into sleep. And it is being activated on that deeply, deeply subconscious level. So, here's one of the things from a doctor that I had mentioned. The science is interesting, and what doctors already know, there's pretty good data suggesting that extremity warming, our feet or our hands, whether they be hands or feet, actually change your body's core temperature. It can drop the core temperature as heat is dissipated, and that helps promote sleep, which is again why some people recommend wearing socks to go to sleep. Some people object to that. I would rather soak my feet. But this is something to consider. So Destiny, thank you for reminding me about that. Boy, that took up a good, half an hour talking one question, leading me on a big sleep hygiene spiel. As you can tell, it is a big, big thing for me. My sleep is so much better. Man, I used to dread going to bed knowing that was going to happen to me all night long. I would find myself pacing up and down the steps all night long, trying to exhaust myself to the point that I could just drift off to sleep for half an hour. And then I would get up and start my day, and I would work out. And of course, if you're training hard, you're not getting the recovery you need, and it just compounds the issue. That is largely in the past. However, I sort of feel that there's an edge that I need to be careful. So I keep that stuff in mind, and I'm always open to trying new things that are going to help even more. And also, seriously, guys, I don't want you to ever have to go through what that was for me. And yet I know some of you are. I know some of you already have sleep issues. But if I can offer any suggestion that might help you in any way, then I'm going to do so. That's why I keep researching this stuff. And when I get that valuable piece of information from a yoga teacher that I admire, I go full in, not just gathering more information, but try it. See if it works. So, guys, it's 2 o'clock. It's time for my meditation practice. My second one for the day. Appreciate you, Odom. I appreciate you, Destiny. Thank you very much for being here. And again, Destiny, for prompting that rather long-winded reply. I hope at the very least that there was some useful information. I will see everyone, well, actually later today. I'll do that short read, the live session, and we'll be back tomorrow for some burpees. Take care, guys, and thanks again.